Welcome to Worthy Mother podcast. Today we are going to be talking all about creating a life that you love, which what better thing to talk about than that? I mean, isn't that what we all want? We want to just be able to enjoy our life, feel aligned with the choices we make, and wake up every day or most every day with gratitude for what we have because it was intentionally created for us. And while that seems like it should be easy when you just think of like, oh, just do the things you love, it's not always the case, right? There's sometimes a lot of disconnect that happens that can make it so we're maybe not feeling so fulfilled in the day to day. So that is really what we're going to be tackling today. And I have Sara Rose Goldfried joining us today. She is a board certified health and wellness coach, energy worker, yoga instructor, writer, wife, and mother of three. She does it all. She has spent the last 20 years dedicated to helping people find their path to well being. And she is going to be a great resource in this episode to just talk about how we get to that place of feeling aligned with ourselves and creating that life that we love. Welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Hardy, a mom of two on a mission to help moms everywhere feel less alone. This is not a parenting podcast. Instead, it's a space for pushing back against societal expectations of perfection and embracing self-compassion in your motherhood journey. Let's get into it. Sara Rose, welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. Can you
Thank
tell us about
you.
yourself and your work?
Yes. Well, as you had mentioned, it all began in the sequence as a yoga instructor. And I think I've been teaching yoga for, I would say over 20 years. I don't want to age myself, but it's been a long time since I started that. And I loved everything about yoga, the act of serving others. And it felt so right. And I, in many ways, felt like I was on the right path of my purpose and meaning. I hit a little bit of a hiccup when motherhood came into the picture because with most mothers, right, there's a recalibration and time and energy and everything gets shifted around. And so that purpose and meaning, I transferred into being a mother, which was amazing, but still there was something left that was missing for me. And so that, in a weird way, sort of began another journey in and of itself. And that was what I like to call the time of knowing what I didn't want to feel like. And after that, I guess if I'm going in sequence, I went on to become a health and wellness coach. And through this whole time, I was continuing with the yoga and energy work and still having that calling within to that purpose and meaning, that whisper that we all know, where we're kind of like, I want to wake up every day and feel joyful and happy and grateful and fully online in your life. So anyways, through all of those components, the journey was amazing. And while I could look back at the part of the motherhood that really sort of sent me into a space that was not so great at the time, it was so necessary for me to come out the other end. And so we do want to, while we're in it, while we're through it, while we're, beyond it, always look at our toughest moments as opportunities and that it's happening for us. And while it's happening, it is challenging, but that little tiny little perspective shift can really start turning the corner of momentum going a different direction.
Yeah, I love the way that you said that because it is true. It can really suck in the moment, right? It can feel
Yeah.
really crummy and not great, but we can also acknowledge that sometimes that is what we need in a sense to like you have to move forward, you have to grow from that space because you can't just stay there. And so what an opportunity. You used the word recalibrate when you were speaking about what happened after becoming a mother. And I talk a lot on this podcast about identity and, what happens when we become moms, what can happen to our identity. And I don't know that I've ever heard that specific word used in the context of what happens, but it is so accurate. It's like we have to kind of figure out a new normal. And that may be taking a lot of things from before we were moms, but it also can be taking completely new parts of our personality, new parts of our reality of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, where we
Mhm.
have space in our heart and things like that. So I'm gonna keep that one. I think that's what I might adopt in my own vocabulary with
Please do.
talking about identity. Yeah.
It is so good, the recalibration. And it's something that I think we miss that moment of, and truthfully, it's so wholehearted as moms. We're excited about it. Many mothers have dreamt about this moment and they wanted this role. And so it is a little bit confusing, but I don't know that I thought, or friends around me at the time entering into the motherhood, onto the motherhood stage, had that conscious moment of, I better reorg. It was only aftermath of, wait, I'm really, I don't feel well. I feel, out of balance to me is always the difference of well or unwell. And it's really that general for me. When we're out of balance in terms of, different areas of our life, our personal development, our communication, our sleep, our nutrition and food, our movement, our rest, if any of those areas are out of balance, we really start to feel unwell. In motherhood, as we probably all know, that immediately, that balance is just
Yeah.
right out the window.
You don't have that base level normal because there's going to be like you're not going to be getting enough sleep in the beginning. Like that's just an automatic. And then, as it goes along, things might change and you might be able to take care of yourself better. And that's important. But you have to be so intentional to get yourself to a baseline of balance because things are not going to be the way that they were.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that's
really,
so well said. That you have to have that intention. It's almost like we leave the life and the balance that we had, and we just kind of skip over it, but really bringing it forward into the present moment and then into the future. And at least for me, and I'm sure there are some mothers out there that gracefully made the transition or really felt that this was their purpose and meaning. And so that's how it was balled up into this role. Not so much the case for me. And so it just wasn't as graceful. And it took me a long time to be comfortable admitting that without feeling a lot of guilt or shame or feeling really worried that someone would misinterpret me as not loving my motherhood journey or my children.
I would love to talk a little bit more about how you came to the other side of that, because I think that is a position that a lot of moms can get kind of stuck in that feeling of, I should be fulfilled by this. I should be completely, fully fulfilled by this because these are my children and I love them and would do anything for them. So, like, why is this not enough? Why is this not just my sole purpose? And it's just not the case for most people that that's going to be what completely fulfills you. So how did you move through that?
I think of the process when I look back as really the first stage or step. I get this visual of unpacking of the boxes and taking stock of really where I was in space and time and what was happening. And a lot of it entailed looking at the patterns of thought and behavior. And so there is a standstill moment. And I think for years, I didn't value that step of, let me just pause for a moment. How am I thinking? How am I, operating as a mother? How am I treating myself? And zoom in such a detailed way. For example, here's one little exercise, but writing down any thought that wasn't positive or joyful or in a way that would fuel you in a positive way. And so if I would stop to do that during the day, it would have been, well, I have this nagging feeling that there's something else for me to do, but I can't do it. I don't have enough time. I couldn't do that because I don't have enough money. Or, oh, I couldn't do that because that's not right for the children. Those were the thoughts going through my head all day long. And it was just also a huge energy expenditure, which I didn't have a ton of energy to begin with, as you know, so many years of sleep and then this and then that. And, you think, oh, they're sleeping through the night and then somebody's teething and somebody's sick. And so before doing anything, it was spending a lot of time in observation. And again, it's hard to do because we like to do. And unless we get an immediate return or we're in that action of, I'm doing something to make my dreams come true, I don't know that we have a lot of value there. And really, that was the first step. And it was such a big one to be able to unpack the boxes. And also, at that point, I had to take a little bit of responsibility because somebody couldn't change my mind or my thought patterns or this momentum that I had gained thinking one way or doing one way. And so after I kind of unpacked the boxes, then I was able to kind of also clearly see that there was a real truth in wanting something beyond the role that I played as a mother. And
Mhm.
I think for some, they might find out as they unpack the boxes, that there are some adjustments that could be made, but there is purpose and meaning and fulfillment that they can derive from motherhood. And I do think sometimes there's something else, but until it's sort of like on any journey, climbing a mountain, doing a marathon, your creative project or an art project, you have to know before you go. We have to kind of
Yeah.
see what we need and where we are. And
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how we have to have the information to be able to make the decisions. And so, if the goal is to make decisions in your life that get you to that place, like you said, where you're like, you just want to be fulfilling the dream, working towards those things. And if you don't even know what that looks like or what is misaligned in the now to be able to make decisions in the moment that actually are getting on a path for that, then it's just not going to happen. So even if that part, the pause, the like understanding where I'm at, unpacking the boxes, even if that doesn't feel so productive or so like satisfying because it's just kind of the lull of it all, right? It still is so important to getting you to that place that you want to be. And I agree that we don't value that enough
yeah,
in our society. And I think especially as mothers, because I think too, there is that idea out there that this should be fulfilling. So you're fighting against a lot of things internally and kind of
yeah,
externally as well.
yeah. When we stop and take the pause, unpacking the boxes, we can use so many different ways to say it. Therein lies what has happened for us. Our distractions, I talked about the patterns of behavior or thought. These are our barriers to success. And so if we miss that step, then we set ourselves out. And I did this probably a few times where I'm like, well, I'm going to do this. And then got a few steps forward and it just didn't feel quite right. Or I'd hit a barrier and then I go right back to step one or almost feel like I took 4 steps back. And so that preparation period before you set off on your new journey, it is so valuable and necessary. And you can work in tandem. You can be taking steps towards your goal, towards things at the same time. But for so many of us, depending on how stuck we feel, how confused we feel, we need that moment so we don't sail out and then hit all of our barriers and resistance and then just fall right back. And the last thing that we want to do is pile on more discouragement or feeling
Hmm.
like maybe this isn't really the path for me because it would be working if it should just flow. You hear all the time, oh, you just go in the flow and you manifest it and blah, blah, blah. And I actually truly believe all of those things,
Hmm.
but part of it is action and inaction.
Yeah.
And again, the inaction for me these days, the being rather than doing, kind of is where it's at for me.
Yeah. As you said, like you don't want to set yourself up to go out and hit those barriers and think this isn't what's made for me. I was having the same thought right as you said that of like there is a responsibility in setting ourselves up for success, not to say that we can't try things and fail and not to say that we won't try things and fail or try things and be like, never mind, that was not actually what I thought it was going to be. That wasn't for me. But yeah, if you're going out trying to pursue something and have not really done the work to make sure that that is the right answer for you or to do the work to set your life up to be able to get that and then you're not in flow and you are hitting those barriers and it feels like maybe I'm just not worthy of this even like
Yeah,
I'm not capable of this and there can be a dangerous thing there where it's like yes, the energy and the manifestation that you put into that can be so powerful, but also there has to be a sense of responsibility for getting yourself to a place where you can pursue that without those barriers or, in a way where you can overcome the barriers that get in your way
yeah,
because maybe it is meant for you. And if it's something that like drives you and really feels like that fire that, you want to get going, it probably is something you should
totally.
be pursuing.
Totally. That fire, that passion, it's that nagging and knowing. And I'm sure so many mothers out there are listening to this and saying, yes, I've had that passing thought that I thought there was so much more to this journey. And it's not this or that, it's this
Hmm.
and that. It's motherhood and. And so we really, and I can already kind of like sense and feel people saying, well, that's not true, but we really don't have to give anything up. You know, we get really tied into the structures of our culture and our world of this is what a good mother is, this is what we need to do, and the shoulds. We have our own structure, probably of things we've seen and patterns that we've followed and modeled. But at the end of the day, I always say like, we're the headliner of the show, of this like rock show. We're like the headliner, the producer, the director, the sound person. Like we're all of the things, and we don't have to put so much energy, attention, and effort into wondering about the shoulds and what other people think about it. So to make a full loop on that, that fire and that nagging and that knowing, you don't even need to check in with anybody else about that. Like good like you did it, you just know.
So I know you spoke about in your own journey out of that place of like what's next and the unpacking, you kind of wrote a list. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you would say to someone who maybe like has that fire, who has that like, I want this and I think I know the direction I need to move in, but like where do we start? And I know it's a big question because obviously it's not going to look the same for everybody, but what would you say to somebody who is in
Well,
that
I love
position?
that it's first knowing what we
Hmm.
want, really asking yourself, what do I want? And many times we'll start with, and I think people have a negative connotation with material things, but it's not, you're forming a vision of what it would
Hmm.
be. And then the next question is always, what is stopping me? If I had to sit with myself quietly, what is really stopping me? And that's part of unpacking the boxes and getting real, listing all the reasons why, and then working from your reasons of why you cannot and making the shift and transition for each one as to why you can and how you can. And so, for an example, if someone said, well, I don't really have enough time, I mean, that was a big one for me. The word time is now an enjoyable word, but before I would hear it and think, I don't have enough time for this, there's not enough time, and blah, 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 time, when I have time. I mean, the list goes on and on. But you could start to, in coaching, we call it habit stack. And I've done this a lot, meaning in the shower. Sometimes that was the only time that I felt like I sincerely had, not only to myself, but to work on anything. And whether it was a mindset, whether it was mindfulness or meditation, and whatever I could couple with something else, that's kind of how it began. And through that process, and I will say, and I don't know if this is the case for all of the moms out there, but I also was struggling with a little bit of some of the stuff that came out of my boxes were perfectionism. I had to do it right. I had to do it well. I had to do it perfectly. I had to just be like, she's calm, she's cool, she's collect. She did it all. She packed the things. She never forgot anything. And then also people pleasing. And so undoing some of that, the patterns of my mind and the mindset, I would work on that doing something else. So small little steps. And some moms out there are going to have a little bit more time to themselves or be able to actually allocate time or funds to take steps in other ways. But if you have zero time and zero energy, that was the other thing. I felt so depleted that I had these ideas and feelings and plans, but with the time and then coupled with the energy, my time ended up being a little sliver at the end of the night. And so at that point, I was kind of like, I'm not really sure if you asked me my name that I could effectively say Sarah Rose. I was just so
Hmm.
wiped at that point. So I guess all that is to say is sometimes it's hard when you're in a stuck moment, but you work with what you have and you just decide who gets to be in charge. Is it the voice that says, I can't and this or that, or the passion that says, oh, I know I can do it. I'm willing to take the tiniest little step and start to put stones out of this pile of I can't into I can, and just to even level it out. But it is a process and it does take time. And it's not to deter anyone by saying that, but it's to almost give reality of saying, yes, every time you do one tiny thing, you've actually started to increase the pile of I can and I will and momentum and in this direction. And to feel really good about that, feel empowered and be like, yes, I did it.
It's like we all have the time that we have, and we get to choose what we do with that. And that idea of like really stepping into the agency that we have and knowing that that doesn't mean you're just going to clear everything and have all the time in the world for things, but that we are in charge of a lot of those things that sometimes it feels like we're not in charge of. Sometimes it feels like I have no control over my schedule, when in reality, the schedule is the way it is because of decisions or non-decisions that were made, right? Like it can be, and I think that people pleasing piece in there that you
Yeah.
spoke about, a lot of moms are people pleasing, whether it's to individuals in their lives or to that greater society of like, I want to be a good mom, and this is how I am a good mom, this is how I show up as a good mom. And in a lot of ways, that can be the almost sacrificing of time and energy and passion and everything to our kids and to their lives because we don't necessarily see the value in making the decisions to do that for our own lives instead because it's not
Yeah.
valued by society.
Yeah. Yeah. And we often do this ourselves. We'll go out in the world, and I know some will check out someone's social media or I Google them. I don't know if that's like still a thing or again, I'm not super, I'm not great with like the tech, different things, but getting a preconceived notion before we even know them. And so it's so common and easy. I catch myself all the time where I'm like, I don't want to just put somebody in a category or a box before I really get to know who they are. And certainly coaches and coaching, we have to leave all of that at the door. We can't have any ideas or thoughts or opinions or judgments about anything because we can't effectively help someone. We have to know that they know what is real and true for them, of what they want, of why they're stuck, of all the things. Meaning somebody could come to me as a smoker. And if I have some preconceived notion or judgment about that, I won't be able to help them in a really deep, meaningful, connected way. And when we're making changes, I feel like that's what people need. And certainly, by no means, not everybody needs a coach to do that, but it's important to not decide you're a mom, Emily Rose, and that's what you do, and this is who you are. But the containers in that outside world are strong,
Hmm.
and we have to kind of shore ourselves up and do a reconciliation of the bank sheet, if you will, so we know that we're worth it and we're not in debt to anything out there, or categories or thoughts or judgments. And that really also does help move us forward and explore different roles and identities and the way of the changes we want to make.
Yeah, what's coming forward to me is that we sometimes even do that for ourselves. Like the reason why sometimes it is so helpful to work with a coach, work with somebody else is we'll make society's stories our own. We'll make those stories of why, a mom might be struggling with XYZ our own, when the why might be something completely different and completely valid and maybe not even something that we cared to work on because it's not a big deal in our value system, depending on what it is. Or maybe it's something we do want to work on, but it has nothing to do with these external messages we've gotten about why moms are always running late or something. I don't know, whatever it is, right? But it is so important to be able to like reflect on that for yourself and sometimes having somebody to reflect that back to you
Yeah.
instead can be
Yes.
so beneficial. I completely agree with that. It's really, really valuable it gives you more of a essence of intentionality when you can
Yeah.
be doing that with somebody and really like dig in a
Yeah.
way that's really intentional and look at
Mhm.
what is the actual reason behind something, then address it for what it is.
Most of us stuck in patterns, and I keep using the word patterns of behavior or patterns of thought. In a way, this sounds sort of overly simplified, but if we really knew what we were doing, we probably would have an easier time making the change. So it is very helpful when, a coach or even a friend or a mentor guide, any word that they might say, hey, I don't know. You may or may not have noticed this, but this sort of blah, blah, blah. But there is a willingness and an openness, and that is a huge part of the step. We talked about just like what do we value and what is it going to look like? And then also the step of unpacking the boxes and really understanding where we are in space and time. But there are other pieces and components to it as well that will work all together and it's equally as necessary to really make forward motion.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about when somebody is lacking time or feel like they're lacking energy, things like that. I'm wondering what you would say to someone who feels like they're just lacking complete inspiration and don't even have that fire. They know that this isn't it, but maybe even feel like, but maybe it just is it because I don't know what else is out there. What would you say to someone in that position?
We'd probably talk a lot about a younger version of
Hmm.
ourselves when we felt really free. And we would probably try to find words that felt maybe it wasn't a specific thing, but words and emotions that in ways that we would like to feel. I think there is a should of the dream should be big. The dream should look like this. And if I just say, I just want to feel free, I want to feel light, I want to feel laughter and love, and we say those things, our minds can trick us into thinking that's not enough. Like, how are you going to,
Hmm.
that's not tangible. What are you going to do with that? That's not a worthy enough role out there. And so there's some exploration around that whole idea of, well, who says and what does it mean? And I do think some journaling exercises, but really our childhood self for most of us, whether I just get a vision of myself, I had this like, what was it, a Huffy? Do you remember the Huffy bikes? You're probably much younger than me.
Yes.
Okay.
No, but I do. Yes, I remember this.
It was this like blue Huffy bike and it had a banana seat. It was so, 80s. And I just that feeling, just riding up and down the street and jumping off the curb. So even that, if I can connect with that, if we think about vibration and energy, that is a little bit lighter and out of turbulence, of say there's a scale and a continuum, and this is neutral. I'm neutral about everything. I don't have strong feelings one way, this way, or the other. And then neutral is in the middle. If we think about like lackluster, and I really don't know that we can immediately just feel that that's on that side. But
Hmm.
so finding anything above the neutral, even if it's just a tiny step, a tiny memory, or even if it's just engaging with ourselves about what does it feel like when we're on, maybe we have to imagine it, our best vacation ever. Like, what are you doing? Where are you? In the mountains? Are you on the beach? Are you on some faraway island? And how do you feel? And so right then we've just nudged ourselves there and we can imagine a different place nudged up from neutral on this side. Whereas when we're down on this side and it's not clear to us, we were probably like, yeah, there's really nothing out there for me. And I couldn't do that because I have to go back to school and I don't have the time and I don't have the money for that. And if I don't get my PhD in that, well, then everybody has a PhD. I mean, on and on that side is so heavy. So for that person, there would be some work and understanding of our energy and how we feel of
Hmm.
neutral and above, because that's where, and I know we talked about this earlier, that flow starts to come in when we're like, okay, we're just a little more regulated, we're a little bit more inspired, lighter, clearer. Clarity often does not come to us when we're struggles. Like it's really hard. And so tools, tips, practices that get us feeling a little bit more neutral. Maybe we don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, this is the best life ever and I'm beaming with gratitude. That's a far jump from when we're feeling pretty kind of like, down and low, but just anything that can help us at least get to neutral. I feel like getting to neutral when we feel stuck, I am just like, oh my gosh, this was the most major accomplishment.
Hmm.
If I'm having a bad day and I can get myself not to, oh, I'm actually grateful and joyful. I don't need to get there. I just need to get to neutral to be like, all right, I'm not being pulled back by that. And then from there, I have more freedom of choice.
Totally. I mean, you're describing like how those thought patterns, when we are in that side of below neutral, it can be really easy to get stuck in thought patterns that are not helpful. They just keep us stuck there. So getting to that place of neutral and then being able to, I mean, you talked about the bike. I'm like, oh yeah, I have a sparkly phone case on my phone right now. And like, it can be those tiny little things that they really don't make a huge difference in terms of like your life and how your life looks on a day-to-day basis. But it's just like this teeny tiny push, this upward push of like, this represents joy to me.
Yeah.
Maybe not to everyone, but to me it does. And it's like a little thing, and how valuable that can be to be in the mindset of choosing the things that just spark a little bit
Mhm.
of joy. Even if it's
Yeah.
again not it's not life
Nothing
changing.
big. Wait, do you have the phone case? Can you hold it
I
up? Can I
do.
see the
It's really cool.
case?
I have the phone case. It's the purple. So my
Wait,
phone's purple.
I just got the
Yeah.
chills because it's purple. I love that, like
Yeah.
the crowd, the chakra. Okay. Oh,
Yes. It's beautiful. And
let-
then I have like the sparkly pink
wait.
here.
Oh my gosh.
I really embrace the sparkles. Like that's been a huge part of what I've been doing over the last couple of
Yes.
years of like being on a journey for myself of creating a life that
Yes.
I love and
Yes.
really tapping into that. It's like I'm gonna buy a sparkly phone case.
It
I'm gonna
feels
get
so
my
good.
have my nails done. I'm just
Oh
these
my
little
gosh.
things that like elevate it a little bit for me. And again, it's not it's
It,
not the one thing that's gonna change everything, but
no,
it's
no.
something.
Well, it's proof of concept and it's
Mhm.
proof of skill and ability that you could make the choice of either negative thought or for you or
Yeah.
against you. And that is really when anyone's working with, I feel like a coach or a guide, at least for me, I'm not rushing anybody through the process, but I'm like, okay, this is about you knowing, learning your skills and ability to do this yourself. So when the next
Yeah.
challenge arises, the next time you want to move from point A to B, you're like, I already know how to do this. It's not to keep someone, not, I'm not saying that coaches are keeping them forever, but it really is, it is that flexing that muscle and that confidence of, I can make any change that I want. And it
Yeah.
starts with those small steps and saying that I'm totally worth it and getting your nails done. I mean, somebody might say, well, I mean, I liked it when I was younger, and they could talk themselves out of it rather than just once a month, once every 3 months. If it's once a month feels like too much, just pick one thing that feels like something you have that would bring you joy, or that maybe you've held back from yourself, or I don't know. And there are a million things to choose from. I mean, the abundance of choices, whether it's nature or nails, which by the way, are they Halloween nails?
They're Halloween nails and
Oh
they're
my gosh.
glue on. I found a brand of glue. So I don't, it's like not even, I buy a few pairs and it's like the cost of going to the salon one time and they last me months. I
I love
change them out
this.
and stuff. It really is like, it's this decision.
Yeah.
It's not even the making the decision. It's the recognizing that you have a decision to make. It's recognizing that instead of just going with the default next step, we can make a decision and we can not just make a decision, not just buy the phone case that I need for my phone and I bought the clear one, make a decision for ourselves of, you know what, there's another one that's the exact same cost. I'm gonna buy the sparkly one. I'm gonna like I know these are little things, but it's practicing recognizing that there is a decision to be made. And it's so important because our agency, our responsibility for making decisions in our life, it's there, but we don't always see it there. And sometimes a lot of times, I think, for a lot of moms, when there is so many external factors to our schedules and what's going on in our day to day, that it can feel like we're just caught up in some current of like being pushed around when there actually are a lot of big and small decisions that we get to make in that. And
Yeah.
you have to be intentional at recognizing those and then making a choice that actually is the most aligned with what you want. And it's just, I love the picture you've painted of that.
They are actually, they seem like, we'll call them little steps, like making the choice to get the nails, or, but when we've been making choices the other way for so long, it actually is a big choice to
Yeah.
say, okay, yeah, I'm going to get this sparkly phone case, which is so, it's absolutely amazing. And the current is either, you're either steering the ship or the current is taking you,
Yeah.
right? It's either happening for you or it's happening to you, and you just decide. And there's a lot of back and forth because the brain with the patterns, it's so powerful. It always wants to go to the root in the neural pathway that we've run so many times. We're
Hmm.
just kind of wired for safety, and that makes sense. And that is why change is so hard. And that when we realize that, we really understand how difficult change is. We see all around us, okay, well, if somebody had this, I think of something that's a little bit, oh, let's go back to the smoking. Even though someone knows that smoking is bad and there's information out there, and one would say, okay, well, if change was easy, you would just make the choice the other way. And so it's to kind of validate all of us that
Yeah.
yes, change is really difficult and the brain always wants something that's familiar. And until we slowly start to make a different choice and make a different choice and run the path and run the path and run the path, then it feels a little bit sticky, right? It's just a little sludgy. I call it, we're in the sludge. We've gone from inertia, like no movement at all. And now we're like crawling through the mud and we're like, does not seem right. It's so difficult. But then right after that, we are free and clear, no mud, no sludge. And it just is, it's so much easier. And the hard part for all of us, I don't know many humans that are like, I love to be uncomfortable. So it's
Yeah.
it's being prepared for some discomfort in that sludgy period. But again, the mindset of, is it happening to me or for me? And just how do we keep going and keep going?
I think that's so important to say too, because it validates the challenges, right? It's like that it may be hard, it will be hard. Things will be hard in making change. And so not to feel guilt about that, not to feel shame about that, not to feel like that again, represents that this isn't the right thing for you to be doing, but rather, that's how our brains work. And it takes practice to be able to make a real change in our lives, and
Yeah.
practicing something that isn't just the natural default is challenging, like no matter who you are.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
This is such an amazing conversation. And as we wrap up, something I love asking moms at the end of the episode, because I am huge on caring for ourselves, really prioritizing the care for our own selves, which is really what we've talked about here, right? It's knowing that we are worthy of like our own attention and all of that. So I would love to ask you how you take care of yourself on a regular basis, and if you just have any words of advice for moms to make sure that they are caring for themselves regularly.
I guess I'll start by saying my care plan for myself is I could go into, a meditation or working out or this or that, but the reality is that using how I feel as the roadmap. For so long, I just disregarded how I felt, where I'm like, why I feel tired, I feel spent, I feel this or that. So that really becomes the ultimate navigating tool of self-care. How do I feel? And so it will be anything that I need. And I've also gotten a lot better at letting it change. And so, okay, well, I was doing this and I don't really feel like doing that anymore. What else can I do rather than feel like, well, I'm not being successful and I have to do this. If I want, to XYZ, I have to do the meditation, and just letting all of that go. And to the mamas out there taking care of themselves is to maybe look at it from a different perspective and zoom out of the detailed things and really go by, how do I feel, and looking at the components of you, whether it's social, emotional, physical, mental, however you want to, organize your health, you as a being. And then just kind of say, where is it too much, too little? Am I in balance? Because ultimately they'll know what works for them and what doesn't. And to talk to people, friends and family and whoever else, to get support if you need it.
I think that's a beautiful way to look at it, really just zooming out, because it can feel, I think a lot of times when we talk about self-care and we talk about doing things for ourselves, it's so like on the micro level of the actions, and it can get annoying. It can be like, this isn't for me, whatever it is. And so I think that that's a really helpful perspective to zoom out and say, when I look at my life, where am I not in balance and what feels bad? Am I feeling not so great physically, or like, am I feeling like I'm lonely and need more social interaction?
Oh,
You
yes.
can usually tell where things don't feel great, even if identifying why might be more of a challenge. And so I think that's just a super helpful way to look at it. Sara Rose, where can listeners find you if they would like to learn more about what you do, connect, anything like that?
I would probably say my website, sararosewellness.com, and then it has, like, the social buttons and
Yeah.
things like that. I always feel like it's easiest to say that.
It's one little hub. Awesome. And we'll have it
Yeah.
all linked in the show notes so that if you want to connect with Sara Rose and learn more about her work, obviously a really like just inspirational person. You're doing incredible things, and so happy I got to have this conversation with you. There's definitely, sometimes I wrap these conversations like, oh, I want to take that little nugget with me into my day. And I think this one has a lot, because these are big things that we're talking about. This is, when we're talking about really creating that life that we love and finding that sense of fulfillment in that, that's not something that necessarily is just an on-off switch, as we've spoken about, right? And so it's just great to be able to say, okay, I'm going to take pieces from this conversation and use that to inform my mindset as I go through today. So I hope anyone listening can do the same.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so, so much.
Yes, thank you for being here and spending this time with us. And to you tuning in at home, thank you for listening. I hope that you found this conversation as inspiring as I did. Have a lovely rest of your day. You are worthy, Mama.